And you're listening to the Jon Gaunt Show. I want to talk to this next chap, Donnachadh McCarthy, co-founder of the organisation for cyclists. There's a new rule here. It says co-founder of organisation. What organisation? Oh, Stop Killing Cyclists. Campaigners are pushing for new rules in London, which, amongst other things, would allow cyclists to go through red lights in certain situations. Donnachadh is leading the campaign. I'm delighted to say he joins us now. Hi, Donnachadh.
Good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon. Explain to me what you want. Going through a red light, because on the surface that sounds like crazy, but explain to me what you want.
Sure. One of the problems we've got in London is nearly every single cyclist that's been terribly killed over the last 2 years has been killed as they turn left by a HGV truck. If we can allow the cyclists to turn left when there's no pedestrians or no traffic at a red light, then we get the cyclist out of the way of the truck and we start saving lives. And the interesting thing about it is they've done it in many cities around the world, including Tokyo, Brussels, Paris. What they found was twofold. One was the number of deaths went down, but secondly, the congestion for motorists went down as well, so it's a win-win.
Right, so go through that again then. We're on a red light, and you want to turn right.
You would treat it as...
against the traffic. You're allowed to go if you've got a bike, yeah?
If there's no traffic and no pedestrians.
Okay. Well, that's similar, isn't it? I know in the States, if you turn right coming out of a junction and you're going right, you can go on a red in a car. That is not on a bike.
Yeah.
How would you differentiate it on the roads? How would we know that was going to happen? Because obviously that would take some getting used to, wouldn't it?
It varies different ways. You could say for all of London this would be the rule, or you could do what they've done in Paris, where they put up special triangular signs saying cyclists can treat this junction as a stop, yield right-of-way sign. Have you come across those in the countryside? You know, these triangular red yield right-of-way signs.
Yeah.
They basically tell road users to stop, look left and right. If the way is clear, you can go through. And that's what we would be doing with red lights.
And of course, this is serious because of how many people are getting crushed, particularly here in the capital, by lorries, etc., and buses. Well, what about the argument that some people might put forward, well, hold on a minute, here's a cyclist, they always want everything for them. They're not even paying any sort of duty towards the roads.
Well, when we are actually saying this would reduce congestion for motorists, it's a win for motorists. But actually, most of the road comes from general taxation, so we pay our taxes as well. The car tax is actually, at the moment, is based on the amount of pollution cars produce. But, the thing about... all roads... Yeah,
but what the motorists pay, only 18% of that actually goes back to the roads. So surely you'd be supporting the motorists and saying more of that money should come back to the roads to institute things like this. Because it's a win-win for everyone then, isn't it?
Yeah, we're very much support that the infrastructure fund the government announced yesterday is hundreds of millions of pounds of money, none of it being spent on cycling infrastructure. So it means that cyclists and motorists continue sharing the same space, which is quite often dangerous. We want to separate the two so we both can actually use the road safely. The interesting thing about red light jumping is that we've looked at the figures, and of the injuries caused, 71% are caused by motorists going through red lights. So a huge problem is with motorists as well. I'm not saying cyclists are all perfect. They're bad users.
No, there are bad users. I found that, believe it or not, I used to commute from Euston down to Waterloo on my little commuter bike. And I did find there were quite a lot of cyclists who would jump in the lights anyway.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm saying, there are drivers who are bad, there are cyclists who are rude, and there are pedestrians who are rude. The question is, how do we deal with this in a constructive way? Well, we think this is one small step forward.
Well, one of my treaters is saying, blooming good idea, let cyclists turn left, it will save lives and misery. So it seems like, some people are supporting. What other things do you want then as part of this campaign?
The main thing we're calling for is investment in infrastructure. The United Kingdom spends around £1 per person on protecting cyclists. Holland spends around spends around £30 per person. So at the moment we're getting breadcrumbs spent on protecting cyclists, and so therefore our top demand from the mayoral candidates in London is we want 10% of the budget spent on cycling infrastructure.
It's interesting you bring in the Netherlands. I had a friend who lived in now I've forgotten the name of the town, Utrecht, and we went out cycling.
Okay.
Everyone's on their bikes, but in there also cyclists have right of way all the time, don't they? And if there's an accident, it is always the motorist's fault. So the motorists have a much more kind of generous attitude towards cyclists, shall we say?
Well, it's in civil cases, almost in Utrecht. Well, Utrecht is a cyclist nirvana, so I'm really impressed you've been there. So we'd love to go. The thing about nearly every other country in Europe, in civil cases, the onus is on the driver to prove they're innocent. In this country, it's on the pedestrian or the cyclist to prove their innocence, which means the insurance industry gets away with hundreds of millions of pounds, which means that families of these people who were killed and injured, whether they're pedestrian or cyclists, have to pay the costs.
Sure.
In other European countries, that isn't the case, and I think that's terrible.
So it's a different way of looking at it, is what you're saying. Put the cyclist first, in essence, because it will actually lead to less accidents, but less congestion as well, and we all benefit from that.
Well, we would actually say put pedestrians first, because pedestrians would have the top right-of-way still at the junction, then cyclists, and then motorists and HGV trucks, and then everybody gets the safer road.
It's food for thought, Donnachadh. Thank you very much indeed for coming on, and no doubt we'll talk again in the future. But you want 10% of the road budget going towards these kind of things?
In London, yes.
In London. Good talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Donnachadh McCarthy, Stop Killing Cyclists. Now, you know I've had a go at the lycra-clad psycho-fascist before, but I liked him because he was reasonable. He says there's bad drivers and impolite drivers, there's impolite cyclists, and he's right. What do you make of that then? So you could turn on the left if you're on a cycle. I know in America you can turn right if there's no traffic coming, even if the lights are on red. These are sensible suggestions, aren't they? That's a pretty sensible suggestion. Tell you what, I went out with my mate Nick in Utrecht with Lisa 20-odd years ago, right before you were born, Rosie. We got absolutely hammered, because in Utrecht, you've never been... Oh, you've been to Amsterdam? No, Nick, there's a foreign city that we can actually relate to, Nick, here, Nick the Knob. They have all the beers, different beers, right, the bottle beers, and they all have their own individual glass, right? So I got a wheat beer or a cherry beer or whatever. Anyway, we went out on the bikes with Nick and his girlfriend at the time. He was called Nick as well. He was not funny, actually. Do you think it comes with the name? Anyway, and we got absolutely plastered. Had so much to eat, and then we had to cycle back. We all crashed. The four of us crashed into each other. Crazy times. Nice. Very good indeed. Zoom into any road on Google Earth in the Netherlands, and there's always a separate cycle lane. Thank you very much, indeed. How about, just an idea, how about cyclists stop undertaking and maybe you won't get knocked off? Well, that's true. And to be fair, Steve, that is what Donnachadh was saying, that there are some bad cyclists out there. You are absolutely right. But I've begun to soften my stance on this, because when you hear of people being crushed in the back of a lorry, I mean, they've got those sidebars now which help, or by buses. You know, I know there's some mad cyclists out there, right? But I think in general terms, we have got to take this whole situation much more seriously. Do you know? Take your view on that one? What about the problem of cyclists jumping pedestrian crossing lights? Bikes can injure pedestrians as well. Thank you very much indeed.
I'm confused by you getting on with a campaign group called Stop Killing Cyclists as well. What's that about?
Well, I think what it's about is... Well, I think... I can't bear them in the countryside, right? I can't bear them when they're like five apart, five in a row across the road in a country lane, right? Pretending they're all doing the Tour de France, right? Yeah. When actually they're sweaty, fat, 40-year-somethings who are having a life crisis and should really be bonking the secretary or getting a Harley Davidson, right? I can't really bear those people, right? Yeah. Because they should get into a single file because they ain't paid anything for the road. So I still got that view. However, when it comes to in the city, I think the more people that cycle would be better. That would ease congestion, but I think I like that Donnachadh guy, once I learned how to say his name, because he was actually being reasonable. He was saying there's probably problems with the cyclists and there's also problems with the motorists, which is a much better way of approaching it.